and I will be presenting André Gide. So, who is André Gide? André Gide was born in Paris on November 22nd, 1869, died on February 19th, 1951. His full name is André Paul Guillaume Gide. He was named after his father, Jean-Paul Guillaume Gide. And his mother's name was Juliette Maya Rondeaux. He was born into the middle class, Parisian middle class. Um, he wrote more than 50 books in his lifetime. That's quite a lot. Humanist. He was considered a humanist and moralist. He was a French author. Um, the reason he was the most famous of all living French writers was not just so much just for his literature quality of his works, but because he was one of the great representatives in France of the positive revolt against 19th century conventions. I feel like this is what made him most popular, what brought out his work out into the world. Um, because if they known him for being a representative in France, they would then figure out he was also a writer and look into his work. He attended one of the most famous schools called Lycée Henri. It is a public secondary school located in France, in Paris. It is widely regarded as the most prestigious and demanding sixth form college in France. So very prestigious. He came from a middle class family, so it is no surprise that he would attend a very prestigious school, which is now a attraction for tourists. Some amazing facts, which are interesting facts. André received a Nobel Prize in Literature in 1947. This is one of the highest honors as a writer to obtain, which is very prestige award. Um, he actually wrote his first book at the age of 21 called Les Cahiers de André Walter, which translate into English, the notebooks of André Walter. Later on in 1895, he married his cousin Madeleine. Um, I think that was very popular at the time. Um, it was said that he asked her to marry him. Yes, he asked her to marry him once and she just said no. He asked again and this is when she said yes and voila, they're married. Um he was one of the youngest mayors of the commune of La Roque-Pignard, which was a commune in Normandy, France. Um, since he was very young, he was only 27 when this happened, which was in 1896. Wasn't very young. Okay, so carry on to amazing facts. He only had one daughter, um, by blood. She was the only daughter by blood. Um, she was born in 1923. He named her Catherine Gide. He had her with Elizabeth von Rieselbign, who was much, much younger than he was at the time. She was the daughter of one of his closest friends, and after this happened, it was a huge disaster. It damaged their friendship and they never spoke again. so it did destroy that friendship between them. She moved in with him to Paris to manage his work life, which was not in any way romantic. After they had had their daughter, it just continued on to a more of a friendship kind of relationship. She adored him, of course, but he was just, it was more of something he did because he was in love with someone else. He was in love with Oscar Wilde, um, which is very important because one interesting fact was that he is homosexual. So the only relationship he had was with Elizabeth, other than having his with his wife, which he never consummated his marriage with Madeleine. So one of the most interesting quotes that I found from one of his books called The Fruits of the Earth, which he wrote in 1897. It states, "Be faithful to that which exists within yourself." I feel like that's very inspirational. Like, it's just being very forward into like thinking that you should believe in yourself. It's exactly what it states. Just trust yourself and always put yourself first. Be faithful to yourself. Love yourself. So, another book that I found very, very interesting and that I actually liked was a book he wrote in 1902 called The Immoralist. It's a story about Michel and Marceline. I feel like by this Gide means it as a cautionary tale. It is about a selfish young husband named Michel, who expresses some remorse throughout his life. He is married to Marceline, and he just cannot reconcile with his devotion to Marceline. He's just very devoted to her, and he feels remorse for abandoning her, which sounds very similar to how things went down with Madeline. They did get married, and he did abandon her after a while. He just could not stay in just one place. He just had to fulfill his desires for other things, like traveling. He went to places like Africa and Russia and stayed there for a long time. He actually met Oscar Wilde in Africa, which was his first experience with the same gender. Um, and while this, he was trying to find himself, and he married her quite young. And they did adore each other. They did love each other a lot because they did grow up with each other. But he did abandon her, and throughout his life, he was very he had a deep sense of guilt. And many say he wrote this book to appease his own sense of guilt towards Madeleine. So I can see how the immoralist and his own life do coincide. They do intertwined. So there's like his personal life got into his work. So in the book, he states things that are very real that did happen in his life, and it was his way of easing his conscience in a way, I think. So I do, that's one of the things I really liked about this book, is because it's about his life. And I find that very interesting. I feel like not just him, many artists, writers, painters do put in their own personal life into their work. I think that's very beautiful. His This was like his therapy. Um, she did die. Madeline died in 1938. So I did read that after her death, his guilt did grow more. Um, but with his writing, he could ease that pain. But after writing this book, he did write a book called Koidon, which does talk, it goes more into depth about his homosexuality, and he does consider this book his most important work, according to his words, his own words. I'm quoting him. Um, because he does talk about his journey, his homosexuality, and all that, and he felt like during those times that was not very acceptable. So he did want to inspire others. He did want to push it forward because it was a very personal problem or something very close to his heart. So he did consider it one of his most important works. Here, this is Andre when he was 24. And then the next picture was when he was 80 years old. He did die at the age of 81. He did live a very long time. So these are my sources. 3 sources. So any questions? I mean, no questions. Thank you.